Today, we are recapping the 2013 and 2016 movies Now You See Me and Now You See Me 2. These movies follow the story of a group of magicians called the Four Horsemen. They use their skills to pull off daring heists, outsmarting the FBI and delighting audiences with their tricks. The series is full of twists, surprises, and magical illusions. The film starts with Daniel Atlas showing a card trick to the audience. He says, "Come closer." Closer, he states. The more you think you see, the easier it is to fool you. Because what is seeing? It means looking, but you're actually filtering, interpreting, and searching for meaning. His job is to take the gift that they give him, their attention, and use it against them. Chicago, Monday. Daniel is a street performer in Chicago. He shows a card trick to a pretty girl, and somehow his card appears on the side of the John Hancock Center. A mysterious man in a hood watches him. After his performance, the girl, a fan of Daniel's, persuades him to take her to his apartment, but he's distracted when he finds a tarot card that says Lovers. It has a note on it, March 29th, 4:44 p.m., 44 East Evans Street, New York. New Orleans, Tuesday. Merritt McKinney is a street mentalist and hypnotist. In a restaurant, he hypnotizes a married woman so she can't talk or move. He then reads her husband's mind and reveals that he's cheating with her sister. Merritt takes $250 from the man and hypnotizes them to forget everything. As he packs up, he finds a tarot card that says Hermit. New York City, Wednesday. On a New York City ferry, we meet Jack Wilder, a street con artist and magician. He bets people's money if they can figure out how he bends a spoon with his mind. One person guesses right, so Jack pays him, but then steals the person's wallet. As he runs away, a hooded man slips a death tarot card into his pocket. Los Angeles, Thursday. At a downtown theater, Henley Reeves performs a water tank escape act. She seems to be eaten alive by piranhas, but then she reappears in the crowd. The audience screams in horror until they hear Henley's voice saying, "Come on, this is fake. Whoever thought of this is a sick sadist." The crowd cheers for her escape. As she packs up, she finds a tarot card that says High Priestess in the tank. Each of the four performers travels to New York City and arrives at a rundown apartment. Daniel and Henley are surprised to see each other because Henley used to be Daniel's assistant. Merritt guesses they used to date. While Merritt and Henley complain about Daniel's controlling personality, Jack arrives late and introduces himself as Daniel's fan. Jack picks the lock of the apartment and they find blueprints for amazing machinery that could make them famous. Las Vegas, 1 year later. A year later, the four magicians are now a group called the Four Horsemen, sponsored by insurance magnate Arthur Tressler. They perform on stage at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. For their final trick, they announce they will rob a bank, something never done before on stage. The audience is excited and many volunteer. They choose a man named Etienne Fossier, who says his bank is the Crédit Républicain de Paris. Daniel thanks Tressler for sponsoring them. On stage, Etienne is briefed by Merritt and fitted with a teleportation helmet. Daniel gives Etienne a card to sign, a red two of hearts. Henley conjures a teleporter, and Etienne steps onto it. Merritt reminds him that it's 11:50 p.m. in Las Vegas and 8:50 a.m. in Paris, so his bank will open soon. They activate the teleporter, and Etienne disappears from the stage. In Paris, Etienne finds himself in his bank's vault. He sees a pile of money worth 3 million euros. Daniel tells him to put the signed card and his ticket stub on the money pile. Etienne then presses a button on his helmet, which activates an air duct that vacuums up the money. Back in Las Vegas, the money showers from the audience. FBI agent Dylan Rhodes is called to investigate and is partnered with Interpol agent Alma Dre. Alma thinks interrogation is useless, but Dylan does the interviews himself. Etienne believes he was transported to Paris, but was actually hypnotized. When Dylan says bullshit, Etienne acts like he's in an orchestra. The Four Horsemen are interrogated next. Jack is relaxed enough to sleep, while Henley makes her chair spin. Merritt turns the interview against them, revealing Alma's secrets and Dylan's abandonment issues. Daniel taunts Dylan, saying the police have no proof that the Four Horsemen are always ahead. The police have to release them because the only explanation for the theft is magic. An officer tells Dylan that Thaddeus Bradley, an ex-magician who exposes other magicians' tricks, recorded the show and figured out how the heist was done. Thaddeus takes the police back to the stage and explains how the man was transported to Paris. The Four Horsemen stole the money weeks earlier and tricked the audience into thinking it happened live. The French bank vault where Etienne was supposedly sent was actually a copy under the stage. Etienne fell through a trap door. He wasn't picked randomly. The magicians had secretly switched the ping pong balls with ones marked with his seat number. The real vault's money was flash paper that burned without smoke or residue when Etienne activated the air duct in the fake vault. The magicians got Etienne's signature from his credit card details and put it on a duplicate card in the real vault. Thaddeus knew this was the beginning and warned Dylan to be ready for the magician's next show in New Orleans. Dylan asks Thaddeus to help the police catch the Four Horsemen, but Thaddeus refused and left. While the Horsemen are on Arthur Tressler's private jet, Daniel begins mocking Merritt's mentalism. He tries to read the mind of Tressler. Daniel guesses the name of Tressler's first pet and his uncle. His guesses are both very wrong, and Arthur tells him the right answers. As Thaddeus prepares for his next video, Arthur Tressler approaches and tries to bribe him into staying out of the Four Horsemen's rise to fame. Again, Thaddeus refuses, and Arthur threatens to bring the ex-magician to ruin. Arthur's demonstration of the threat, however, has Thaddeus warning him instead to be careful, as it may be Arthur who will be ruined. The press is soon reporting the sold-out show for the Four Horsemen's debut in New Orleans. Perhaps made aware of Thaddeus's presence, the magicians demonstrate the secret of the common disappearing rabbit trick. They then move to original stunts. They create soap bubbles strong enough to send Henley flying through the air. Jack throws cards with enough force to knock the top off of a pencil. Merritt hypnotizes 12 people to believe they are football players ready to tackle the quarterback upon hearing the command, freeze. For the finale, they invite Arthur on stage and empty his bank account, distributing it to the audience, which mostly comprises of people whose insurance claims had been denied or reduced by his company. Dylan is informed by the other FBI agents that the Horsemen have indeed robbed Arthur. Chaos erupts as the audience discovers the money in their bank accounts. Arthur tries to go after the magicians, only to find himself chained to the stage. Dylan runs up the stage to arrest the Four Horsemen and shouts, "Freeze!" They then escape with help from the hypnotized football player audience members, who tackle Dylan. The police chase the magicians through the streets, but are ultimately tricked. Only Alma comes close as she manages to corner Daniel with her gun, but seeing him unarmed and frightened causes her to hesitate, allowing Daniel to escape. Dylan is close to catching them, but discovers that he is tracking himself. Although Dylan blames her for letting Daniel go, Dylan knows Alma was probably the only person not fooled by the Four Horsemen into running in the wrong direction. Finally, more receptive to her opinions, Alma tells him about the rumors of the magician's secret society called the Eye. They were a group of magicians similar to the Robin Hood, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, often dependent on illusions and great leaps of faith, or even blind obedience. She also believes that there may be a fifth horseman helping the magicians. Dylan is skeptical, but then Alma starts drawing comparisons to a particular magician, one who Thaddeus exposed. That man was so humiliated, he attempted a complex underwater stunt that went awry, yet a body was never found. The heist might have been a mere distraction in the bigger picture, something that Thaddeus understands when an infuriated Tressler speaks to him. Arthur hires Thaddeus to expose and humiliate the Four Horsemen in their next performance out of revenge for them robbing his private accounts. Things are tense before the Four Horsemen's last performance in New York City. They are still following instructions from their mysterious benefactor, but worried that after everything is accomplished, their benefactor will abandon them to the police. As the youngest, Jack is most panicked, and the others order him to follow the plan. The police arrived and surround the building. Jack is left alone to destroy all remaining evidence, but Dylan and his partner discover his hideout. What evidence he couldn't burn, Jack grabs and tries to flee, but Dylan and his partner are in hot pursuit. Jack escapes in a stolen FBI car, and the car chase is broadcast live before Jack loses control of the vehicle. When the car flips and skids to a halt, Dylan tries to get him out, but he can only take the evidence before the car explodes in flames. The remaining three of the Four Horsemen post an online video mourning Jack's loss, but resolve to continue their final act in New York. From the papers Jack had tried to destroy, Dylan and Alma learn that the Four Horsemen are targeting a particular safe in the Elkhorn Company, which is under the surveillance of another FBI team. Alma has no jurisdiction, and with the Four Horsemen's consistent ability to outwit Dylan, another FBI team leader takes over the case. Dylan receives a phone call from Bradley, and following their conversation, suspects that Alma may be helping the Horsemen, but she denies this. The team rush to where the safe is stored, only to find the room empty. As it turns out, another FBI agent had been hypnotized to give instructions for the safe to be transported. They intercept the truck before it can leave. Intending to catch the Horsemen by surprise, the team escort the safe to the destination, only to meet up with Thaddeus, who they believe is the fifth Horseman. Calling them idiots, Thaddeus tells them to check the safe. Inside the safe, they find only balloon animals. The Four Horsemen have outsmarted them again. By now, Dylan is convinced there is a fifth member of the team, potentially Alma or Thaddeus. 5 Points is where the final performance is to be held. Dylan once again attempts to arrest the Four Horsemen, but the three escape by using holograms, dummies, and even jumping off a rooftop. They then transform into money that rains from the sky into the cheering crowd, but the bills are fake. Knowing that the story of the Four Horsemen is now over, Dylan resigns himself to let it go and explore his feelings for Alma instead. Meanwhile, Thaddeus returns to his car, only to discover it is filled with the real money from the real safe. The FBI show up and arrest Thaddeus, believing he was part of the plan. In prison, Thaddeus tells Dylan that he was framed. He explains how the Four Horsemen performed the safe heist by hiding the real safe behind a giant mirror to make the FBI believe it was already stolen, and then faking Jack's death with a duplicate standard-issue FBI car and a stolen body from a morgue, with the latter stealing the money from the real safe after the FBI had left and stashing it in Thaddeus's car, but can't figure out how they managed to set everything up by themselves. He realizes then that there was indeed a fifth member, and it was not him or Alma, but Dylan. Dylan was the mastermind of the entire plot, though Thaddeus is unable to determine why. Dylan tells Thaddeus he wants him imprisoned in the bars forever, trying to figure out why. He leaves to reunite with the Four Horsemen, who are stunned to learn that he is the mysterious benefactor who brought them together. He initiates them into the Eye. Back in Pointe des Arts in France, Alma finds an old newspaper article slipped in her current paper. The article is about the magician who attempted the underwater trick and drowned, leaving his family penniless. Dylan appears and confesses that he is the son of the drowned magician. He designed the Horseman plot to obtain revenge on those involved: Thaddeus for humiliating his father, the bank in Paris, and Tressler's company, which refused to pay insurance on his father's death, and the Elkhorn company that produced the faulty safe used in his father's trick and the Horseman's final act. The company may have had a good bank safe, but for the safe Dylan's father used, they used an inferior quality of metal, causing it to rap and contributing to his death. Dylan was living in poverty until the Eye recruited him. He admits that he had planned everything, but he did not plan on meeting and falling in love with Alma. Although she briefly considers turning Dylan in, ultimately, she chooses not to, believing that some mysteries were better left unsolved. She puts a lock on the fence, symbolizing it as one more secret to lock away. The sequel to Now You See Me begins with a magician, Lionel Shrike, attempting a dangerous escape trick by locking himself in a safe and dropping it into a river. Thaddeus Bradley, a magic debunker, reports that the trick is impossible. Lionel's son, Dylan Rhodes, expresses his worries, but Lionel reassures him he will escape in 300 seconds. However, Lionel doesn't resurface, and the crowd panics as Dylan is held back from the water. In the present, Thaddeus is in prison, talking about a secret magic society called the Eye. He says the Four Horsemen, a group of magicians, will get what they deserve. In New York City, Daniel Atlas, one of the Horsemen, is walking through a tunnel and hears a voice claiming to be part of the Eye. Daniel is tired of hiding and wants progress. The voice promises that things will soon get better. Meanwhile, Dylan Rhodes is pretending to chase the Horsemen as an FBI agent, but he's actually their inside man. He talks to a new agent, Natalie Austin, and senior agent Cohen about the Horsemen's trail, but they think he's lying. Daniel returns to his apartment and finds a woman named Lula May on his couch. He triggers a trap that makes it look like Lula gets decapitated, but it's just a trick. Lula reappears behind him, showing she knows a lot about the Horsemen. Daniel remembers her from an old magic show. He tries to tie her up, but she disappears when he turns his back. Daniel meets with the other Horsemen, Merritt McKinney and Jack Wilder. They find Dylan and Lula together and learn that Lula is joining their group. Dylan says it's time for their next show. They plan to expose Owen Case, the CEO of a tech company called Octa, for stealing people's information. The Horsemen get to the launch site in New York. While disguised as employees, they set up the trap with cameras, and Merritt hypnotizes Owen into walking into a room where he will openly broadcast his deceit. The show begins with Danny, Lula, and Merritt taking the stage, and the audience taking the Horsemen's reappearance as a big surprise. Suddenly, Dylan finds a fool tarot card in his booklet. Before the Horsemen can perform any tricks, however, their own show is sabotaged as a distorted voice begins to speak. The voice starts to expose the secrets of the Horsemen, namely that Jack is still alive and that Dylan is their mole. This happens as Natalie Cohen and other FBI agents show up. They begin to arrest Dylan, but he uncuffs himself and cuffs the agents together. The Horsemen all run to the roof of the building to escape. They slide down a chute, thinking they will land at a truck that gets them out of there. However, they end up in the kitchen of a Chinese restaurant. To their bewilderment, they have somehow ended up in Macau, China. To add even more confusion, the Horsemen discover that this was partially orchestrated by Merritt's twin brother, Chase McKinney. A group of armed thugs take the Horsemen away in vans. Dylan gets a phone call from Thaddeus, still speaking as though he is going to exact his revenge. Dylan later uses Cohen's ID to get into Thaddeus' prison cell and eventually sets him free as he helps him figure out what happened with the Horsemen. The Horsemen ride with Chase to their next destination. Chase and Merritt explain that they were once a brotherly duo that performed together until Merritt went off and made a name for himself, leaving Chase kicked to the curb. Chase says he once disguised himself as a pizza delivery guy and hypnotized Merritt before stealing his information, along with that of the other three Horsemen. The thugs bring the Horsemen into a building and take it up to the penthouse where they meet Walter Mabry, Owen's former partner that was believed to have died a year earlier. Walter faked his death. He got the idea from Jack after Owen and him declared unstable when Owen stole Walter's plans and took credit for their work. Walter also explains how the Horsemen ended up in China. They were put to sleep as they slid down the chutes and were flown out to Macau while unconscious. Walter then states that he wants the Horsemen to pull off a heist in which they are about to infiltrate an underground facility and steal a memory stick that would allow people like Owen to gather information on many people. Lula, Merritt, and Jack all refuse, but Danny agrees to it. The next day, the Horsemen go to what is said to be the oldest magic shop in the world. They meet a man named Lee and his grandmother, Boo Boo. Lee provides the Horsemen with the materials they need to pull off their heist. Dylan and Thaddeus fly out to Macau to find the Horsemen. Thaddeus knows that Dylan had been plotting revenge on him after believing Thaddeus goaded Lionel into performing the trick that took his life, leaving Dylan still angered. When the two arrived, they visit the same magic shop and speak to Boo Boo and Lee in regards to what they know about the Horsemen. Thaddeus walks into a sarcophagus and disappears, leaving Dylan with only a note that says, "Your move." The Horsemen must first meet a South African gangster at a casino before he guides them to the facility where they will find the stick. They are brought there in disguise as researchers. Creating diversions, Jack gets the stick and attaches it to a playing card. The Horsemen get inspected individually, while constantly trying to keep the card hidden from view. After a long inspection, they are cleared to get out. Knowing the stick would set off the metal detector, Jack creates another distraction to allow Merritt to throw the card to Lula without detection. Danny waits for someone to pick up the stick, but when Walter shows up with the thugs, Danny learns that he's being double-crossed. Walter's thugs hit Danny as Walter demands the stick, but Dylan appears and makes it seem like he grabbed the card from Danny, leading the thugs to chase after Dylan. After taking out most of the thugs, Dylan runs into Chase, who distracts him long enough for Walter to show up and knock Dylan unconscious. Dylan is brought onto a boat. Walter knows about Dylan's desire to avenge his father, which Walter states is something that he relates to, as this is part of his plan. His father turns out to be Arthur Trussler, the same man that Dylan aided the Horsemen in screwing over after Trussler's company denied Dylan's mother a claim for Lionel's death. Trussler coldly dismisses this and proceeds to have Dylan placed into a safe. They drop the safe into the river, confident that Dylan will drown. As the villains leave, Dylan manages to pick the lock open, but he loses consciousness before he can resurface. Thankfully, the Horsemen figure out where he was, and Dylan pulled him up. Trussler gets into his limo and sits next to Thaddeus, as he apparently helped in getting back at Dylan and the Horsemen. After resuscitating Dylan, the Horsemen take him out to their hideout. They discover that the card they have with the stick is fake, meaning they may have lost it at some point when Danny and Dylan were attacked. Feeling despaired, they are then met by Lee and Boo Boo, who reveal that they are part of the Eye and have been watching the Horsemen for a while. They realize that they need to put on a show to expose Walter and Tressler. They begin to set up their plan. The Horsemen head to London to put on their show. First, Jack does a setup in front of a small crowd of people where he takes 3 volunteers, 2 Jacks and a Queen, to hide behind 3 large cards while people try to guess where the Queen went. Next, Lula does a performance involving doves. Then, Danny is gathered in front of a large crowd where it appears to be raining, leading him to act as though he's manipulating the water. The FBI head in toward London to find the Horsemen, while Walter, Tressler, and Chase are all tracking their locations as well, noticing that they are located in a pattern. Chase finds Merritt and deduces that he is headed towards Greenwich. Feeling that they are in trouble, Dylan calls the Horsemen together to meet at their rendezvous point. Meanwhile, the FBI had managed to apprehend Thaddeus. Dylan and the Horsemen are caught by Walter's goons and taken to his plane. As they take off, Chase suggests that they throw them all off the plane. One by one, the 5 are thrown off the plane. As Walter and Tressler drink to celebrate, they notice something tastes strong with their champagne. Tressler then peels off the sticker and sees a fool card. The plane stops, and then they look outside to see the Horsemen waving at them. The villains get off the plane and see that the entire thing was staged. Thousands of Londoners are gathered around the Thames to watch the show, which is also streaming around the world. The Horsemen then elaborate on how the show was set up, using help from Lee and other willing participants, leading them to a fake hangar that made the villains think they took off. Jack also managed to hypnotize Chase when he bumped into him moments earlier into planning to throw the Horsemen off the plane. They expose Walter and Tressler to the public, along with Chase, leading to the 3 of them getting arrested. Natalie confronts Dylan for his deceit, though he claims he's still the same guy she looked up to when she started working for the FBI. He hands her the stick with all the incriminating evidence, and he vanishes. Not long after, Dylan and the Horsemen are taken to a building belonging to the Eye. Dylan enters a room and finds a picture of his father, including one of him with Thaddeus. Thaddeus emerges, he escaped custody, and explains that he and Lionel were partners whose act was pretending to be rivals. He has always felt remorse over what happened to Lionel, but he is proud of the magician Dylan grew up to be. Dylan appears to forgive Thaddeus, and he asks what happens now. Thaddeus says he should find a successor, just as Danny and the other 3 walk in. Thaddeus walks out, but not before telling the 5 to pay no mind to the curtain in the room. They end up walking to the curtain and find a door behind it. This leads them towards a spiral staircase. They descend down the staircase as the film comes to a close. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.